COVID-19 funds, and we are pivoting our discussion on the Auditor General's report 2019-2020, and it's again transparency, accountability issues that we are discussing in this particular debate today. So we want to, we want to look at the Auditor General's report that recently highlighted the management of COVID-19 in the country, and so first of all, I have a couple of experts here. Like I said, others are going to join along the way. I want to recognize the two experts who will be, discussing, unpacking the findings that were released by the Auditor General's report. One of them is the journalist, investigative journalist, Solomon Serwanja, who is also the executive director of African Institute for Investigative Journalism, and also Mr. Peter Echeru. I've known him way back, I think 3-4 years ago, in a leadership training by Uganda Youth Network, I think. Yes, so Echeru is the program's specialist for health and human rights advocacy at Center for Human Rights Development. We also have two other panelists that will be joining us along the way, God willing. There is Dr. Ekwaro Ebuku, is an health expert, but also a former president of Uganda Medical Association. And also, we also have Honorable Okin Pipi Ojara. I have issues with these African names. Yes, the Honorable has already logged in. Thank you. Is the MP for Kitgum District, and also a member of Public Accounts Committee in the 11th Parliament. You're welcome, Honorable. Yes, these are a panel of experts who will be unpacking the findings in the Auditor General's report. So I want to briefly highlight this, these findings to all of us who are in here, participants. First of all, in the report, it highlights that Uganda allocated 4.3 trillion towards management of COVID-19. And so of these monies, we also, the Auditor General also highlights that 11 billion Ugandan shillings, there was financial discipline in the utilization of this money by the MDS, ministries, departments, agencies, and districts for, in COVID-19 interventions in that financial year. And then it also highlights that 25 entities under COVID-19 related, they undertook COVID-19 related interventions worth, 143.884 billion without fully adhering to the procurement rules and regulations established by law. Some of the anomalies or issues that were identified were irregular use of direct procurements without signed contracts, late delivery of goods, payments before receiving goods, and failure to involve the contracts committee. The report also says that shillings 1.3 billion were disbursed to 17 entities. They remained unaccounted for. Quite a number of concerns that this report highlights to do with, some of the entities did not record the donations that were given to them, and so on and so forth. And then it goes on to give recommendations. The report recommends that the Office of Auditor General, advised government to initiate measures to raise preparedness, in relation to the management of COVID-19 situations in the country. And so this panel that I already, introduced to you is going to unpack it for us as citizens of Uganda. What went wrong exactly? We all need to know, because it is as citizens, we deserve the right to know what went wrong exactly. And also, I want to, not to forget that this Auditor General's report findings also affirm some of the findings that were, identified in a study that, Africa Leadership Institute and the Uganda Management Institute, in conjunction with National Policy Forum, they published a policy brief on COVID-19 that also still highlights some of the gaps, especially in relation to existing policy gaps, which you've also had already highlighted in the report, especially with compliance, procurement processes, and so on and so forth. And so I want to, first of all, I want to invite, like we've all had, so much was appropriated, but then so much was also not accounted for. And so how did this happen, and who was responsible? I want to invite, first of all, I want to invite Honorable PP King Ojara to go first. I want to invite him to go first, to give us insights, especially in terms of spending in relation to operations of COVID-19. Yes.
Hello, I hope you're getting me. As Martina has stated, my name is Ken Pipi Ojara. I represent the people of Chua West, Kitgum District. I'm currently a member of the 11th Parliament, but also in the Committee of Public Accounts. I was also privileged the last Parliament to be the Deputy Chairperson of Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, the 10th Parliament. So as we have just indicated, I think when you look at the Auditor General report in regards to the subject matter, it is important for us to highlight first and foremost the role of Parliament in trying to create checks and balance, especially as far as the government expenditure is concerned. It is very clear that when you look at the report of the Auditor General, a lot of money was first requested for, and a lot of money was appropriated, and a lot of money was also spent. And as we indicated, first and foremost, in the financial year under audit, 311 billion was disbursed to the ministries, as you rightly put it. But then you will see that the government even went to the government even went to the extent of spending more money than the amount of money that was disbursed. Up to 4.36 trillion was actually the money that was spent during that time, leave alone the disbursement itself. So the Auditor General report clearly indicates that there is definitely an anomaly in terms of how the government was able to utilize this money that was passed by the Parliament. The Auditor General report indicates clearly that a number of entities that were given this money did not actually spend it in the right way according to the policy governing government expenditure. I know we are all familiar with the Public Financial Management Act, which is the guiding document in as far as the expenditure of government money is concerned. You look around the procurement. We look around the procurement which were given to the entities and MDAs. There was a regular use of direct procurement, which was cited by the Auditor General report, meaning the government did not follow, these entities and ministries did not follow the rightful procurement processes that enshrined in the Public Management, Public and Financial Management Act. There was also procurement processes that were, the documents were not signed. So procurement happened where most of the documents were actually not signed. So how do you do procurement when documents are not signed? That one eventually will become an irregular procurement process. There were also, the Auditor General noted late delivery of goods, which means, you procure and then the goods comes after maybe even the expiry period that it was required. You imagine this is an emergency procurement, which was supposed to be done within the COVID-19 framework. So you will see that the late delivery of goods affected the very people who are supposed to be able to use those goods and services when it's procured. We have also seen that payment before receiving goods, this is out of the government policy. You cannot pay money before you receive the goods, so that the delivery not comes, after actually you have not received the goods when you're paid. So these are issues that were highlighted in the procurement process of the COVID-19 money that was to us as Parliament and to the Auditor General was erroneously actually spent. So up to the tune of about 1.3 billion Uganda shillings up to now, up to date, have not been accounted for. And these are issues, because where did this money go? Was it diverted? Was it utilized for expenditures that were not captured within the framework of expenditure? So these are issues that the Auditor General came up with. We have also seen that 69 entities did not record the donated items to the stores. You remember very well, Ugandans, that when the president launched an appeal to whoever would want to donate to support the COVID-19 initiative, people came up. The number of people came up. We have been seeing it on TV. We have been seeing it also from the National Task Force. People donated, members of Parliament even donated. I remember in the 10th Parliament, the 20 million that was given to the members of Parliament. Most of the members of Parliament, especially on an NRM side, decided to donate to the National Task Force, the 20 million. So it was up to almost the tune of 24 point something billion that was donated. And this was not captured anywhere. There were vehicles that were...
Just to stop you there a bit, I would like to ask, what has been your role as a member of public account, PAC, for instance, especially in relation to these particular issues that the report has highlighted? What have you done? Did you, for instance, in your interaction with the Ministry of Health, have you interacted with them in relation to these particular issues that the report has identified?
Well, we are yet bound to have a very serious interface, especially with the accounting officer of the Ministry of Health, and we all know her, Dr. Diana Twine, who is the permanent secretary. So as Public Accounts Committee, this is what is now on our table. We are actually preempting the discussion, which I think is was not so proper, but all the same, this is a public document. We can as well share and see what is going to happen. But the most important thing is that as Public Accounts Committee, we normally scrutinize and examine this report, and we see where to put apportion responsibilities accordingly. If, for example, the responsibility of some of this procurement lies on a particular ministry within to a particular accounting officer, normally what we do, we recommend to the government either to remove that accounting officer for faulting the procurement process or faulting the guidelines that is utilized for public expenditure, or subject that accounting officer to the legal process. And we have ever done that. I think you have seen recently when the accounting officers were being appointed, a number of them were dropped. We don't want to say who is who, but I think our recommendation has always been very clear to the government. And we have seen some of these accounting officers normally drop.
I will come back to you, Honorable PP, but let me first get to Peter Echeru, who is a representative of CSO, and we know that CSOs are representatives of citizens. So I want to ask, do you as CSOs have a national task force on COVID-19, for instance, or are you represented in the National Task Force for Uganda? Because you are a key stakeholder that should be part of this process. Yes, Mr. Echeru.
Sorry, I had dropped you a bit. I didn't hear the question well.
So I am asking, first of all, as a CSO and a representative of the citizen of Uganda, I would like to ask, do you have a national task force as CSOs, especially that, in relation to response to COVID-19? Or are you part of the National Task Force of Uganda? Are you represented there? Because you are a key stakeholder. Let us hear from you.
We do not sit on the National Task Force, but we are part of civil society organizations that are concerned about how government is implementing, how government is undertaking its response to COVID. And we've been actively involved in around things like the costs of treatment. Those are some of the areas we are deliberately working on, but not on the demand or on the supply side accountability. No, we don't sit on that side.
Okay, so I want to turn to Solomon Serwanja. As a media representative, the media is usually known as our mirror as citizen. If you don't like what you see, you should be able to report about it. So could you please tell us, what do you think about this whole COVID-19 thing? I believe that you've already read the Auditor General's report, because in our previous discussion some time back, you even asked me about this particular report. So I know that you've read the report. What are some of the things that stand out for you, especially from the media perspective?
Okay. Hi, thank you very much. Greetings from the African Institute for Investigative Journalism, where we believe that investigative journalism can play a critical role in public resource accountability. And I'm alive and I've read through the Auditor General's report. And I want to thank the honorable members of Parliament on this, but you'll allow me to pin you a little bit. The Auditor General's report exonerates I think did not include the expenditure of the 10 billion shillings that was given to Member of Parliament in the yes, the 10th Parliament. And we all remember the scuffle that was. They were given 10 billion shillings illegally, and clearly they were instructed to return. Each Member of Parliament was told to return the 20 million shillings to the district task force. We all remember what happened. Some of them returned this money, some of them did not. And so for me, before members of Parliament point their fingers at the other issues raised in the Auditor General's report, I think they need to be held accountable for the 10 billion shillings. Did they return the money? That's the first question, because as Parliament, they have to play the oversight. But before you actually remove a dart from someone's eye, is your eye clear? Are you able to see well? So I think would like to interest ourselves as the public to look at the Auditor General's report into the 10 billion shillings that Parliament had allocated itself, and whether all members of Parliament returned this money, and those that did not return the money should actually return it. And I think it needs to really be clear which member of parliament returned the money, who did not return the money. I think that's an unanswered question. So we wait upon the Auditor General. But meanwhile, I think that investigative journalists have a critical role to play to ensure that this money was returned, or members of parliament should be compelled to return the money. I also want to say that before I take a deep dive into the Auditor General's report, it is important for us to look at the 7.46 billion shillings was given to for classified expenditure, and of course there was a supplementary budget to that effect. Auditor General again does not tell us where that money is. I know that classified expenditures are, they don't have to reveal them, but I think that the law allows, and this is where I believe a lot of money goes unaccounted for. I know that the Auditor General audits those books of accounts, but does not open them to the public. I think that there must be a deliberate effort for the people who are consuming this money to come out and at least tell the country where that money went. We spent a lot of money during the COVID-19 pandemic under the disguise of the classified expenditure. And if we do not stand up and ask such accountabilities to be brought out, a lot of money will be swindled. And I mean, look at the history that has come with the whole issue of classified expenditures. There need to be effort to declassify some expenditures which have been maybe after like 10 years, can we reopen those classified expenditures to the public and declassify them so that we know how that money perhaps was spent? If the law allows for that, I don't know why we are not doing it. But a lot of money is being swindled under the disguise of classified expenditure, which actually is passed by the August Assembly, which is supposed to play an oversight role. So if Parliament does not really demand these expenditures, and every time there's a supplementary budget which comes on the floor, they just say, well, we pass the budget, and there's no any form of accountability to that effect. I think it's important for us to pay attention to that. Let me now focus on the money that was unaccounted for in the Auditor General's report. I would love us to point to, first of all, be grounded where this money came from. Some of this money came from grants, others loans, and another from our taxes that we pay. A significant chunk of this money went to two areas. One was in economic system strengthening, and the other was in health strengthening. Now, it is important for us to focus on accountabilities on those two fronts. And I'm alive to the fact that money was given to government, and that money, I can break it down. I mean, the numbers, people easily get bored with the numbers, so I'd interest you to look into the breakdown of these funds. But I wanted to focus our attention to where we get money from, so that we understand that if there is no full accountability for these resources, what it means for us as a country, what it means for us as a people, and how far we will go to pay this money back. So I want to tell you that the World Bank in itself, we got money from the World Bank, we got money from the International Monetary Fund, we got money from the European Union, we got money from the Africa Development Bank. Now, that's money, for example, money from the IMF that we have to pay back. The World Bank, that's money we have to pay back from the World Bank, right? We also got money from the donations that the Member of Parliament was speaking to. So it is important for us to understand that we borrow this money, and ultimately we are going to pay for it. Our debt today has grown to about 51.9. We borrowed heavily. A lot of the expenditure that we had in the COVID-19 response plan was borrowed money. We all know that. Ultimately, we'll have to pay for it. Any issues of accountability that are not detailed, it means that we are going to pay for the money. If you just give me one more minute to conclude my submission. I think that we are all concerned that Auditor General can raise such pertinent issues in his report, and there is no deliberate effort from the executive to actually bring people to account. We have just borrowed an extra $1 billion from the IMF. This is money that is also going to go for accountability. So are we seeing deliberate effort by the executive to put people account for this money that has been accounted for? What lessons do we draw? What is the role of Parliament? Even before it comes to the role of the journalists, yes, we've seen interesting investigations done. NTV has been running a series of investigations. NBS has been running a series of investigations. But what happens after this investigation run? Do we say deliberate effort from the state, from the executive, from the IGG, right? From the anti-corruption court, from everyone who is concerned to actually see that this is not just a closed chapter? Because I can tell you, if nothing is done, this report is just going to add on the pile of reports that the Auditor General has actually produced. Martha.
Thank you so much, Solomon, for that elaborate take. So that's why we have Honorable PP Okinoja here, a representative of Great Parliament of Uganda, and also consideraries from the Public Accounts Committee. I know that some of the issues that are going to be heard out here, you will take on to, and place them before the committee and the National Task Force. And so right now, I want to, first of all, recognize the presence of the other guest, Dr. Ekwaro Obuku. I would like to invite you, Doctor, to say something about, in relation to this report, being a representative of the medical fraternity and also a member of this particular fraternity. What is your take on this particular report? Just briefly. Yes, hello, Dr. Ekwaro. Can you hear us? Okay, so perhaps when, it could be a network issue or something. So let us now go to the next. I would like to ask, first of all, Solomon raised a very pertinent issue. Where did the money go, Where did the money go? Everybody should be asking, where did the money go? I want to first of all get to Honorable Okin. I'm aware that we first of all have got PPDA entity, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets entity in this particular country. And before we even begin to ask where did this money go, do this particular, first of all, companies, private entities that took this money through these procurement processes, do they have exceptions to the rule? Or how is it possible that a number of contractors can access these funds without even going through formal procedures? Throw more light. What does the policy in our country highlight, especially in relation to procurements during emergency situations like this?
Yeah, thank you, Martina, and thank you, Solomon. I heard your questions and your concern. Just to respond to what Martina has said, I think there is nobody who's exceptional in terms of spending public resources. We are all being guided by and bound by the legal regime that we have, the policy documents that we have, the Public Financial Management Act that we have. So whoever goes contrary to the provision of the law is actually supposed to be liable. And that's why when you look at the provision of the law, it is very clear that whoever faults the law for his or her own benefit is supposed to be liable. And I think in the 10th Parliament, we have been able to do this. And we hope in the 11th Parliament also we should be able to do the same. Just before, let me first respond to what Solomon indicated about the 10 billion that was disbursed to members of Parliament. I think he rightly put it that the Auditor General report has not highlighted what exactly happened with this money. And I think this is even some of us who are in Parliament, our major concern. Because when this money was disbursed, I think the court ruled against, first and foremost, the disbursement process, and secondly, what should be done with the money. Eventually, the court said this money was supposed to be returned, should be given back to the National Treasury. But there was guidance also issued. There were about 2 or 3 guidance from the Treasury, and then also from the courts, and also from the executive. So I think some of us who were really very concerned about this, and moreover, we were in public accounts, we decided to give this money back to the district task forces. However, even as we speak now, we do not know whether this money that was given back by the members of parliament were actually utilized according to the provision of the law. For example, I also made mention that some members of parliament decided to give their money to the national task force. And when you look at the issues of accountability within the national task force, I think it leaves a lot still desired to respond to some of those issues. So in my view, as Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, 11th Parliament, it is within our mandate to demand an audit onto this particular money, which has not been able to be reflected in the current audit of COVID-19 financial year 2019-2020. So I want to assure you, Solomon, that we are all puzzled. I'm also puzzled myself because I was in the 10th Parliament, and in the 11th Parliament, when you look at this report, it doesn't capture the 10 billion that was disbursed to members of parliament. So we will definitely demand for an audit in terms of who returned the money, who did not return the money, and if you returned the money, where did the money go? If you gave it to the National Task Force, what happened to the money from within the National Task Force? And if you return to the District Task Force, what happened to the District Task Force? How did they utilize them? I think we need an answer to that, and I can assure you that we will be able to follow that. On the issue of classified expenditure, you are very right. The Public Finance Management Act, section 24, clearly indicates it provides for the issue of classified expenditure. I was not selected to be a member of those who are in Public Accounts Committee to look into the classified expenditure for the financial in the 10th Parliament, but I can guarantee you that I'm privileged again at this time that I've been selected to be able to scrutinize a classified expenditure for the 11th Parliament. So we are privy to this, and I can tell you that if I can quote provision of the law, that in section 2, subsection 2, subsection 2, section 4, section 24, subsection 2, that a committee of parliament comprising of the chairperson of the committee responsible for budget, the chairperson of the committee responsible for defense and internal affairs, and another member appointed by the speaker shall scrutinize classified expenditure budget in a closed session. So I'm telling you, I'm none of these chairpersons, but I've been selected to be one of the people who will be able to scrutinize classified expenditure. But I think basically, if we understand why this classified expenditure had to come on board, I think the justification that was given by the government is the issue of national security, the issue of national security, mainly national security actually, and looking at also how we can protect some of our security interests in the region. And that's why it is actually classified and it's actually audited. And this team, which I've just read, will be able to scrutinize this expenditure and give recommendations accordingly to the government how this really is being, the money is being spent. But basically, the provision doesn't give us, as the members of the public, to be able to understand to know how this money is spent because of our national security issue. So for me, I will also comment and it will stop there, that because of the national security issue, this money is provided for. We only know the amount. The public has known the amount, as you have indicated, but how this money is spent, I think even me, who belongs to that committee, will not be able to, delve into much because of the issue of our security. Well, you have also indicated the issue of grants, loans, and you rightly put it so that our debt level now has gone to 51.7%. This is an alarming situation, and we should all be concerned about as Uganda, as the citizen of this country, because when you look at the GDP is about 41%. So which means the national debt level has gone far much beyond even our GDP. So indicating that we are in a very, very precarious situation in as far as our economy is concerned. The economy is vulnerable. The economy is really not doing well. We are almost mortgaging our country in terms of these foreign debts, because as you can see, it has gone so high, over and above actually the threshold required. So it is now incumbent upon the government to be able to address some of these issues squarely, because otherwise it is a big concern. We have to repay some of these loans. We have to, with interest moreover. And if you see even our national budget, the 44 trillion Uganda shillings, almost about 15 trillion goes for debt repayment. So these are issues that you as citizens of this country, we need to engage the government to realize that there's a potential danger to this country when you look at the issue of the debt level. Lastly, on the issue of the
Can I get back to you later?
Just 1 minute on the issue of the executive being accountable. I think, yeah, as I said, our recommendation as Public Accounts Committee has always been very succinct, and it points out clearly to some of the individuals in government who have not been able to account for this money effectively. And of course, we leave it to the government to decide what can be done to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable PP. And at this, I want to get back to Mr. Echel. First of all, as a watchdog, civil society also play a watchdog role on behalf of the citizen of Uganda. So I want to ask, what is your comment in relation to where did our money go and what went wrong? Because this money was supposed to benefit the citizen. And yet during the second wave of the pandemic, we saw how the pandemic ravaged, the country. Lots of people died. There was, shortage due to shortage of oxygen in hospitals, issues to do with PPE, shortage of blood. What is your comment in relation to that?
Thank you very much, Martina. Good afternoon, everybody on the panel. Solomon had indicated about lessons. What lessons do we learn? And I can assure you that as a country, we never learn lessons. If you look at all the previous emergencies we've had in this country, they just become an opportunity for people to make money out of an emergency. You've just recently seen about the locusts, and it has been the same story. Emergency, abuse of procurement processes, the same complaints that we raise every time. And so I think this one should be a special case. But I want to indicate to you that response to health emergencies is an extremely complex issue. And the moment you don't manage it well, you're in trouble. Because in emergency, you must win the trust of the people you're trying to protect. And the moment you lose that trust, then you'll have a challenge. Sometime last year, the UN Secretary General, while commenting about COVID, said that this is the time when governments must be as accountable and transparent as they have never been before. Because you must be able to win the trust of your people, you must be able to win the trust of the donors with the little resources that come within within your areas of work. Unfortunately, it seems for us as a country that has not been very important. UNDP has issued guidelines on how do we deal with accountability during this COVID era. And they issued those guidelines on the understanding that at this point, you'll have a lot of money coming in. You'll have supplementary budget country coming in. And so countries must be able to ensure that they utilize the money well, but also retain the confidence of the people. If you do not have confidence during an emergency fight, when you have a pandemic like this, when you issue guidelines, like the ones that we've had from government, like the ones of stay home, social distance, and all the things, if your people see that you are not accountable, they will treat an emergency as an opportunity by those within government to benefit from the emergency. And so they will not treat your word as a very simple, as a very serious issue. From a civil society perspective, we think there are errors that were made that we need to learn from. You can imagine that a district receives grants, a district receives donations. It does not actually quantify, because the law is clear. If I give a bucket to a district, the district must quantify it. That is what the law requires, and say that we've received a bucket worth 1,000 shillings. Once the district has received some of the things, they must enter into the district systems. And that usually is through the process through which it enters the store. The districts must ensure that this is captured so that it is clear that anyone who wants to track the resources that have come to the district is able to do that. It's able to track from the time it was received to the time it entered the store, to the time it left the store, to the time a beneficiary got it. Those are basics in accountability. And you cannot make a case that it is because of the COVID situation that you could not do those basic things. So as we speak now, for most of the resources that went to the districts, about 50% of the resources that went to the district, no one can say where they went. It could be that the political leadership at the district used them for campaigns at the last elections. That is a possibility, because in some cases, even people who received the money, the resources that the district received, did not sign for them. Actually, over 50% did not even sign for what they received. So the question is, did the things go to the people who are supposed to benefit, or did they go to finance campaigns, or did they go to benefit directly the families of the technical people at the district? These are critical questions that we need to do. And we are supposed to be in them to learn. But like I have said, we've not seen any money for it happen. You found refugee things that were supposed to have been for refugees somewhere in Tororo, when they are supposed to have gone to West Nile and those other areas, but they are there in Tororo. It is very likely that the same things have happened to the resources that we received for COVID. My only challenge here is that from all the resources that we received, this audit covers only about 311 billion, only that. And yet we have received in excess of 1 trillion shillings. We should be knowing what exactly happened to this. Now, as part of those guidelines that we see from UNDP, one of the guidelines UNDP says that regardless of how the COVID situation is in a country, we must create mechanisms through which parliaments are able to scrutinize expenditure and receive reports in relation to COVID expenditure. It is emphatic, and it says parliaments must continue to exercise oversight regardless of what the situation is. Whether it is through Zoom or physical meetings, parliaments must continue to sit and receive accountability. Now, what Solomon raises comes in here. That you see, when you want to hold someone to account, you must sit at a higher pedestal. You must be having a higher level of integrity question the other person. Now, if you also have received some of this COVID money, you will ultimately have no moral authority to question. You'll have lost some of this credibility to ask the hard questions. They will tell you, but you also received it. And so that's why it's important that going forward, we still have COVID here. We could be seeing the third wave hitting high. It is important for Parliament to shield itself from this abuse. Because whoever will send you the money will also know that we'll also receive some, and this person who has received the money cannot hold us to account. So Parliament needs to step up its game and make sure that it is clear that it does not touch this money, so that it has the moral authority to question those who received the money from government. So in terms of the question, Martina, you asked, where is the money? Even Auditor General doesn't know where the money is. And no one of us will know, because people did not sign for this money. It was just standing there, you take photos for receiving with the person who has donated, and that is it. Where it went after that is not clear. So in terms of dealing with this pandemic and going forward, maybe we have the next phase of this pandemic. We need to go back.
Just in a few seconds, Peter, you could wrap it up. I'll get back to you.
So what I'm saying is that going forward, I think Parliament now needs to ask government, going forward, if districts are receiving money, how are they going to account for this money? If they receive donations in kind, how are they going to ensure that the district formally receives this and ensures that they get into their store, and that when they get out of the store, we eventually know who the beneficiaries of this are? Because I can assure you, if Parliament goes to these districts to look for beneficiaries, they will actually also not find where the money went. So we need this clearly implemented. Just a minute. The BSST, the principal secretary, had actually communicated to local governments in writing on how to manage this money. Surprisingly, local governments chose, not just governments, local governments and the other MDS, chose to just ignore the directives from the BSST. The directives were very clear on how you receive, on how you account, on how you're supposed to do evaluation of all the in-kind donations. They just put them aside and did things as they wanted. So we don't know where the money is.
Thank you so much, Peter. So I want to get back to Solomon Seranja, but please, maybe before that, I want to ask again, is Dr. Ekwaro already in? Can you hear me, Dr. Ekwaro? We want to give...
Yes, I have been following. I have been following.
My God,
but,
sorry. So I will hear from you.
Of course, now.
Before I get to Solomon, you know, like I said, being a member of the medical fraternity and also a representative here, what is your take in relation to this particular report findings? And I also want to ask you a second question that you could wrap it up all together. How could we as citizens, for instance, view and demand accountability for COVID-19 interventions by the state? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear
Wonderful.
you. The rest can
Wonderful.
hear.
So I would like to address three things. The first one really is what constitutes accountability, and then accountability to who, and then moving forward, all lessons learned. When I read that report, I did not see what I was looking for from the perspective of a public practitioner or from stroke patients. What are you looking for in terms of accountability? Dr. Ian Clark recently, not so long ago, wrote an article, an editorial in the New Vision, saying that in Uganda, people with offices don't solve problems, they follow procedures. So when I looked at that paper, I thought of the same. Actually, we are following procedures. We are looking at how, to what extent did the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies of government follow procedures rather than did the intended objective in terms of solving a particular problem, controlling COVID-19 met? And the answer is no. Because when the next wave came, all those things we have been doing became not, because we died. Accountability. Is it financial reports, goods, or population level outcomes, which is good health? Why were we giving over 100 entities money when we have 14 regional hospitals and 1 Ministry of Health? So why were we giving Parliament money? To do what? What are they going to do? Treat COVID? Are they going to enforce public health measures? You think through radios, the people cannot access that information? So for me, I think that is the fundamental question that must be resolved. Otherwise, we are going to have the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th wave before maybe somehow the disease mutates. Number 2 is the accountability to who? The patient is waiting there. There are only 2 or 3 things which are known to work. So why are we doing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? The first one which is known to work is vaccines. And I can tell you today, we are not going to access vaccines for the next 2 or 3 years, to the extent that it will have population level impact. We can get a donation of 300,000, 500,000, a million, 2 million. Those things are not going to impact us at population level. We shouldn't reject them, but we accept them. We need to do something about vaccines. Either we manufacture our own or something along those lines. But to say that we are going to receive vaccines in 9 million doses, I'm waiting for those 9 million next year and we see whether it will really come. Only then will we say vaccines work. So in the absence of vaccines, what has been shown to work? Lockdown. But what is the theory of change of lockdown? Because we're now talking about accountability. When we said we are locking it down, we said we are preparing to open up, to go back to normal. So we lock down, we purchase sufficient beds, we hire a sufficient number of human capital. I'm not even talking about doctors, nurses. We prepare so that when we open up, because when we open up, the disease is going to come in full force. Okay? What did the citizens receive? No oxygen. People are dying in lines. Not enough nurses to turn patients. Patients who are dying because they couldn't receive good nursing care. With all your money, you cannot go abroad. You can't buy oxygen and all those kinds of things. You cannot employ a doctor in your house. And your accountability beyond that auditor report, which was in 2020, December. Has anything changed to date? Without that, we are better off locking it down and then implementing the theory of change in lockdown. That is, if we lock down people, we need to provide for their livelihoods. Otherwise, as soon as we open up, which is irresponsible and lack of accountability, we are still going to see the same thing happening unless the virus somehow mutates and stops affecting humans. But if the current strain, the Delta strain, persists and survives, accountability will mean that, yes, we open up, but the reasons for which we locked down must have been attained. Okay? The reasons must have been addressed, the objectives must have been met. When I look, I asked a fellow in ICU Mulago, are there ICU beds? The guy said, yes, this is an anesthesiologist or critical care physician. He said, there are now beds. I said, are there beds because patients have reduced, All the original 27 have become like 40 or 50. He said, by the way, the 27 have not increased the ICU beds. So your answer is as good as mine as a potential patient. You know, sometimes when we talk about these things, we should be angry because tomorrow we are going to go there as a patient. This COVID sometimes is transmitted in ways we don't understand. Parliament received money of vehicles. So when we are talking about accountability, what accountability is that? Okay, you will drive your Prado to Mulago when you have got the condition and there is no ICU bed. Wouldn't that wait? That to me is accountability. The commissioners of parliament who are not accountable to the people they represent when they can still continue with that budget line instead of diverting that item to address the critical needs. This COVID had disappeared in February, March, and we almost thought that actually there was no need to continue to purchase anything and invest in it. But that is a trick of the pandemic. It goes and comes, goes and comes, goes and comes. It now appears to have gone. And as soon as we open, I understand we are going to open, it is going to come back. So to me, the paper accountability, yes, we meet a procedural requirement, but we do not meet the accountability to the population as leaders in the parliament, in the executive, even in the hospitals. I just looked at a diagram in a tweet sent showing the process of making oxygen. I have gone to Uganda Oxygen before 2-3 times to pick oxygen for relatives who are unwell. And the process is so simple. We have been teaching chemistry in O level, A level, and even university. Where are these people who are supposed to produce oxygen as government employed? Why are we suffering and saying we must award a contract to a company in Turkey to come and fix our terms of the education system, the public service in terms of hiring biomedical engineers to work on our oxygen, and also the people who give out the contract abroad to make oxygen, and we have to fly them in here. So what are the lessons learned, and how can citizens demand? Citizens must join our organized groups. As doctors, I saw the press conference today. We have said we have given public service and the Ministry of Finance and Health and even the State House an ultimatum that we are going to organize ourselves if they cannot organize, so that we speak on behalf of the patient, but also our colleagues who have died in the line of duty. Where is accountability in parliament when we can tax the risk allowance for nurses and doctors and all those healthcare professionals on the front line? Have you heard of soldiers who go to the war front and their salary is taxed? Because this is a war. It has killed over 2,500 Ugandans on record. Have they taxed the 200 million shillings per MP? Have they taxed it? Why do you demotivate the people who are saving our lives? Those are my 3 submissions, and I hope that citizens can organize themselves through civil society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ekwaro, for your deliberation. I want to get back to Solomon.
Right now, we cannot gather, yes, because it just sometimes would be demonstrating and matching this.
Thank you, Doctor, for your submissions. I want to now invite Solomon Seranja again. You hinted on the role the media has been playing. I want you to highlight again anything else you've left, especially in terms of what role has the media done in bringing this issue out, for instance, and what are some of the responses from citizens that you've had?
Yes. Thanks again, and interesting conversations happening here, and it really goes down to understand the feeling of, of people the sentiments that are coming through from the different quarters goes to, to the core of the real issue. Today, we are talking about accountability. And I just wanted to inform us about this whole animal called accountability. At the African Institute for Investigative Journalism, we are working on a project called Profiting from the Pandemic. And, how government ministries, agencies were actually stealing money in broad daylight, and the involvement of the private sector in theft. I'll give you a classic example. I was one of got COVID. I got COVID-19. I was taken into Mulago for 14 days. And then I went out. Well, I didn't have symptoms, but they told me I had COVID during the first wave. And I got in there for 14 days. And then what I saw in the ward was rather interesting. We saw, people playing cards. I was there, people were playing cards. They would ask, what are you feeling? Then they give you vitamin C. They give you vitamin C. So what are you feeling? I'm fine, nothing, vitamin C. But day and night, numbers were swelling like crazy. If you look at epidemiology reports and study the figures in terms of how the number of COVID patients grew with time during the emergency, was kind of interesting statistics to look at. But if you juxtapose that with the time when government came out to say that they have opened up for home care, look at how those numbers just fell from the high numbers to the lower numbers. So the question then became, the president in some of his speeches hinted on the false positives that were declared by the Minister of Health, and was angry. He actually said about 600 false positives. This story was captured by the press, the Daily Monitor. Google it, you'll find it. And so we had cases of false positives that spent time in hospitals, and government was spending on them. Let me break it down. Government contracted a company to provide food to all COVID-19 centers. This is what is interesting with those procurements. It was one company that supplied food from Kamoja to Kisoro. One company. It's interesting because the report goes down to detail it, and the Ministry of Finance report goes down to detail it, that in instances, these people were charging government 105,000 shillings for food per person per day. Let me say that again. If you look at the Auditor General's report and the Minister of Finance report, audit report, it states that this company, for example, the people were put under quarantine at Grand Global Hotel, were charged, according to the books of accounts that the Auditor General audited, 105,000 shillings per person per day. Now, in Mulago, they were charging, I think it's in Arua. This same company was charging 65,000 shillings per person per day. There are two anomalies here. One, that you contract one company, Best Central, to provide food to all quarantine centers from Arua to Entebbe. Two, that this company can actually charge 100,000 per person per day. What does that mean? If you just calculate that you are spending, and that's during the first wave, we've not yet got to the second wave where we had the cases which were really serious. Now we all remember what happened in the first wave of, the videos that were circulating online, people playing cards, dancing, and all that. If we are spending, for example, 100,000 on one person on meals alone per day, it means that you multiply 100,000 times the number of people who are in that particular quarantine center times 14 days, right? Now, I was inside the quarantine center for 14 days in Mulago. Let me tell you what to eat. We used to have a donut and porridge for breakfast, sometimes an egg. We used to have meat, rice in a silver plate. You know the silver plates that I'm talking about. Sometimes they would give us water. Dinner would come, sometimes you'd have, rice and ginat, sometimes beans, sometimes meat with a bottle of water. I don't know how you can say that you can price that at 65,000 or 100,000 per person per day. Let's give it plus minus 10K for that food, for two, lunch and dinner, that's 20,000. Plus 5K, that's 25,000. But you're costing the food at 65,000, and some places you're costing it at 105,000. Think about that for a moment. And so, how did these people begin to steal money? This is what they did. They contracted firms who inflated prices, who eventually, when you look at the Auditor General's report, because, for example, the contract that was signed between that service provider and government was saying that each person was spent on 25,000, and that's 10,000 for lunch, 10,000 for dinner, 5,000 for breakfast. What does that mean? It means that the private sector was part of the system to actually steal money during the pandemic through colluding with people in places of power. And when we are talking about accountability being Ugandans, we need to dig deeper beyond the auditor report. We need to start to examine. NTV published a story last week about masks. Who was contracted to produce masks? I saw a story said Silk Events. Now, Silk Events, when did you start doing masks? So Silk Events is an events company. It was given a consultancy to start producing masks. Kampala Capital City Authority was given 6 billion to start producing masks. If you go down, investigate where this 6 billion went, they say that they gave it to women organizations to actually empower them amidst the panic to come up with masks. Where did these women really receive them? Can we pay particular attention to the tiny detail in these COVID expenditures to look beyond the Auditor General's report? Because the Auditor General's report does not get to the detail of it. If Kampala Capital City Authority received 6 billion shillings to produce masks, how many women organizations got money? Right? So I think that the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament need to beyond just looking and visiting the hospitals. I think that they need to put their foot down, investigate these issues to the tiniest detail. Because if we do not put in place a stringent accountability measure to safeguard public resources against being stolen, then I think we are going in a very, very wrong direction. It is very disturbing that within, and what is it just disturbs me, that amidst the pandemic, people look at it as a measure to steal. For heaven's sake, doctors in Mulago working on elsewhere inside, they are crying. Some of them would come to my room and say, we have not been paid our allowances. We have not received our risk allowances. We will not come to the ward tomorrow because we don't have PPEs, because we have not received our allowances. How many times have we published this in the press? Right? That.
Solomon, can you wrap it up?
Like, I'm wrapping it out. I think that it is, you know, the issue of accountability.
Yes, I hope we haven't lost you. Yes, hello. Solomon, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. Let me wrap it up. So I'll
just in a minute. Kindly wrap it up in a minute.
Yeah. 3 things for me moving forward. One, I know that Honorable P.P. Okin has said that, you know, as the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, they're going to investigate these issues and present a report before the floor of Parliament. I think that Parliament needs to go on waiting on the executive to actually bring people to account. Parliament has the power to stop any more borrowing. The Minister of Finance comes on the floor, permission to borrow. And because the August Assembly doesn't have safety measures and they just put it to the August Assembly, the ayes have it, and then permission granted to borrow more. I think that there should be a great effort, and Parliament has the power to weigh in on some, put the executive on the spot. We've seen it happen before, where you've refused to pass budgets because something has not been done. Let us see a Parliament that is going to put the executive on the spot to provide accountability and to bring people to be punished for embezzling public resources. I so submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Solomon, for your submission. First of all, you raised a number of pertinent issues. I want to first of all refer to 2 of them, which is, you know, the corruption often also happens between the interface with private and public, and also other members have highlighted, you know, the exorbitant prices that were charged by private entities, you know, healthcare providers during the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw so many people lose their lives. So I want to ask Honorable Minister, first of all, is it within the law? How does someone even get to be charged a lot of money, millions of money within a week, for instance? Is it within the law or not? What needs to be done? For instance, especially as a member of PAC, is there a committee in Parliament that interacts with public regulators of private, providers? Have you, for instance, interacted with them as Honorable Okin? And what do they say, especially about these exorbitant prices they have been charging COVID-19 patients?
Yeah, thank you very much, Martina. And I've heard what Solomon has said, and also what Dr. Kwaro has said. I think I was just controlling myself not to be very emotional because of the weight of the challenges that some of us who are in Parliament, who want things to be done in the right way, are actually getting. But certainly we have seen the level of the sentiments and the feelings that people have. And even some of the pop-in, comments that have been coming in this discussion. But all in all, I want to appreciate whatever level of discussion and issues that we have raised. It is very clear, and they're very, very, correct issues. They're authentic, and we also know they're all authentic. But I think, we should actually go beyond what we see in terms of accountability, in terms of misappropriation of money, in terms of corruption. We should go beyond that and start focusing broad in our minds. Why is this happening time and again? Why do we have a corrupt, official at the ministry level, at the departmental level, at an agency level? why do you have this? Why do we even say the Auditor General is not going deep down there to audit some of these issues to bring to light? For me, I think, and I want to be very sincere on this, that there's a very big problem. There's a very big problem in this country, and the problem points to the way the system of government is structured. The way the system of government is structured. I think if you have the headmaster of a school deciding on each and every dot of every action and instilling fear across the board, definitely you will never be able to do something with the confidence that you should be able to do in terms of protection, etc., etc. So these are issues that I think as citizens we need to really kind of look at. We always give a social contract to members of parliament for 5 years, to a sitting government for 5 years, to, we give a social contract. And this social contract is either to be renewed or not to be renewed. But eventually you'll find since 1995 up to now, this tendency of corruption, this tendency of unaccountability is persistent. It's really persistent. And we continue with the same lamentation. So I think we as Ugandans, we need to reawaken our potential in terms of, is this something that we really want to be done? Personally, I'm also very tired as an honorable member of parliament. If I went to Kitgum, for example, you find the doctors, the nurses, things are in a standstill. And then you come and raise it 1,000 times in the House of Parliament. 1,000 times. You will raise it to the minister, you raise it to the speaker, you raise it to whoever. Now, in the circumstance, it means something is going wrong somewhere, which we need to be able to identify as citizens of this country. And if needs be, why don't we cause ourselves to change the entire system of governance in this country, to be honest, this and overall. This is my very honest submission. In terms of these private providers who have been overcharging people exorbitantly, well, as Public Accounts Committee, we are mandated to summon whoever we feel is not doing a good service to the citizens of this country. But I'm afraid we have not been able to do it yet. In the 10th Parliament, you remember it was towards the end there when the pandemic was really very high. Everybody was geared towards this election period. And I think people were not paying so much attention onto these private providers. Now, when we started recently, of course, the issues of these exorbitant prices that have been charged by these private providers came into light, and it was really, really, really so alarming. I remember we raised this in Parliament, but I think the responsibility per se lies with the government, because we are operating an economic system where we have given almost the entire life of our citizens to the private individual, to the private, investors. They can do anything they want to do. They can charge any prices. They can, because we do not have a system of control. We do not have a system of regulation where these private providers are supposed to be regulated. Imagine even in the education sector, you just look at the education sector, leave alone the health. You find, charges in the same kind of level is being levied in each and every different schools differently, no set standards, no regulations. You are free to do your own thing. This is the country
let me
in
take
which
from there, Honorable. I'll get back to you. I want to hear from Peter Echelu. Honorable has said that there is no system, especially that, in relation to regulation of the private sector, healthcare providers, even education. I know that you are from a law background. Would like to hear, you mean there is no law that regulates, healthcare providers, for instance, in the country? Yes, Peter Echelu, I am asking it to you. Is there a law that regulates?
Yes, there is certain.
Hello?
There is basic regulation. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
I am saying there is basic regulation. But what about? It is by design. Just go to Kampala here and ask, who are the owners of the big hospitals in Kampala? Go to Kampala here, ask, who are the owners of these big private schools in this place? And so it is not in the interest of the system to regulate it because they are the primary beneficiaries of an unregulated system. So it is important to have regulation. As Center and Human Rights, we decided to drag government to court over regulation of the cost of treatment in private health facility. You remember that government actually considered in court that it is supposed to be their responsibility to regulate. And they agreed that we will. But in terms of taking active steps to ensure that regulation actually happens, the real practical thing, then you find a problem. Uganda has a problem of what and what is done are usually not the same thing. And so that is what is exactly happening, that you can have a law on regulation, but the people whose mandate is to regulate cannot regulate because they are primary beneficiaries of an unregulated system. And so they will all sit back. You know, just move our hospitals, big schools. You get to know who the owners are. And so that's why, while there could be a system of regulation, regulators are not interested. And so we will continue running a system that looks like we have no government in place, like it is a kangaroo state. It's strange. By the way, if you look at the Auditor General's report, you get shocked that the government spent about 56 billion to feed itself, to feed its people. But between Uganda Police and Ministry of Defense, they had almost 70 billion shillings to themselves for COVID. Almost the same, more than the amount, almost the same amount of money they gave to the Ministry of Health. Where is the science here? Where is the common sense? If we want to use that word, which is sometimes very rude. It just doesn't make sense. You give local governments 22 billion. All these local governments across Uganda. And part of the things they're supposed to do includes managing those isolation centers and the rest. Then you give police 30 billion. Then you give ESO. I've actually failed to understand what is the relationship between external security organization and COVID. I don't know whether they were doing surveillance on how COVID is entering into the country. I don't understand. But it's strange that an institution like ESO was receiving, money on COVID, for COVID-related issues. Ministry of Defense received 30 billion for COVID. What is the relationship? You want to beat your people and kill them in their houses, but you cannot feed them in their house. You're more comfortable paying the police and the army over 60 billion to make sure they clobber your citizens and keep them in their houses. I find it very interesting.
Thank you so much, Peter. I know that we are time-bound, so I just want to ask one more last question to all of you, the panelists, which I would really want you to answer in at most 2 minutes before we open up to the participants. Perhaps they have a few questions before we close. So having discussed all this, and I know that we may not even be able to exhaust all this. So going forward, also knowing that lockdown has already, the 42 days of lockdown have already ended, and government, the president is set to address the nation this evening. What must be done going forward, especially to ensure that we are prepared? How best can we tighten our processes so that we minimize some of the losses that we've already been highlighted in the Auditor General's report in terms of resources? What about issues to do with, for instance, integrity and accountability? Just in 2 minutes, I want to start with Dr. Ekwaro, just in 2 minutes or less. What do you think government must be done? Yes, Dr. Ekwaro, can you hear me? Are you there?
Yes, I'm following very well.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, to tell government what to do is a big joke in Uganda, because government has very good plans all the time. And they can even adopt what you suggest. The challenge is implementation. So if I would want to make a suggestion is government should crack the whip and arrest and imprison some of these officers who have been corrupt, because that is the problem along the way. There are things which cannot change immediately. I don't think there is anybody on the sides of the citizen. The MPs are on their own. When I say MPs, I don't mean individuals like the current MP on the forum. I mean as a group. Yes, individuals are there using the 200 million to donate this and that, this and that. But as a group, the MP should have passed a resolution in to permit the 200 million from each MP, put it together and do something like mass purchase of either, more ICU beds, or if they want to give out food, some serious bulk of food, or contribute to the of their constituency, which is the district hospital, rather than giving them this money. So I do not think that there is anybody in government really standing for the citizen. Seriously. So what do we do as citizens? Please keep yourself, nothing to do in town or where there are crowds, do not go there. They are the people of Chikubo who must work, whether you like it or not. Those are the people who should get the vaccines first. What do you see happening? The people who have computers and they can work at home, they speak English and they can, influence decision. They say, we'll give you the vaccine first. So that is wrong. And these are some of the issues I would like to see addressed. The equity in accessing vaccines should be to those who must go out there to eat food. Many of us have government salaries, but we go there for the vaccine first and the boast around. Yet, really, we can work on our computers at home. 2, the citizens must follow SOPs. Without that, and with the absence of vaccines, as we see, we are on our own. Because we are still going to Bulago and there will be no oxygen, which is, I can tell you, it's not there. There is no magic which has happened there.
Thank you, Dr. Ekwaro. I want to also give Peter Echeru 1 minute, or actually 1 minute to your recommendation, way forward. Just a brief one.
Okay, for me, really, is especially the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, now that we have a member here. I honestly think that this is the time they should spend to really rethink about accountability, COVID area. I can assure you we are in this COVID thing for a long time. It is not going to end with the opening if it happens this night. We are in this thing for a long run and more money is going to come in. We must be able to stop the thieves who profiteer from people suffering. Parliament, I would love to see the PAC set aside most of the other work to concentrate on asking for accountability, especially for this money. It is still little money, but we need these people to begin to learn that there are consequences for misusing their offices. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter Echeru. I want to hear from Solomon Seranja. Are you still here, Solomon? Hello? Yes, Solomon, are you there? We want to hear from you, and as we close, what are your recommendations to government? Okay, so perhaps
I think Solomon.
Yeah, perhaps we'll get back to him. So I want to get to Honorable PP Okin Ojara. Having had all the discussions, deliberations, I know that you mentioned that you got emotional. Everybody, definitely, all of us, and we appreciate that these issues are touching you, and it's very important that they touch you so that you can go again as a representative to push them forward. And so we want to hear from you in terms of your, your last word, your closing remarks that you want to, the message, perhaps in terms of what you want to tell members moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martina, and the panelists. I think it has been just a wonderful opportunity to engage with this kind of forum. And I'd like to thank the African Institute for Development for putting me on board. But I think the most important thing here is that I would wish we Ugandans, we should come to a self-realization, and that we have a duty and a responsibility to perform in order to better the lives of our citizens. Therefore, my urge is to the government is that they should try as much as possible to do the work, the social contract that was given to them by the citizens effectively, without fear or favor. Similarly to the parliament, we always want to advocate for independence in order to execute our role effectively, to check the executive's power, and also to monitor how some of these taxpayers' money are really spent. So I think Parliament should make sure it maintains its roles and responsibility of being independent and making sure, we also carry on with the role that the Constitution has given us. As PAC, I think, Peter, I think we will try our level best, or will do our level best to make sure we engage, especially on this COVID money issue, which actually today, there are certain things that I really had not paid keen attention to, but today it has come to light and it has come to inform me. I think I will be a better person now in Parliament to make sure if we are talking about this COVID money or making a presentation on this issue of COVID, I think I feel more enlightened by this kind of discussion. So we'll definitely be able to pursue this to the dot, and making sure we help whoever is responsible for the accountability of this money held to book. So that's the area that I really want to comment on. But I also want to inform my good friend Ekwaro that my 200 million Uganda shillings, which I think we have received, I've already gone down on the ground to Kitgum. I actually came from Kitgum about 2 days ago. I want to make sure this money is spent to boost the agricultural production in my constituency and in Kitgum district. Because during this COVID period, there was also some element of drought, and people are going to get a lot of problems, challenges in terms of food security in my area. So I will engage this money to make sure I purchase some ox plows and oxen, and then give to the vulnerable people to be able to make them more productive. And this is the kind of little contribution that some of us can make in as far as in trying to support our people is concerned. So thank you very much for the engagement. It has been wonderful. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Honorable. But before you go, I want to open it up a bit in about 10 minutes to the participants. Perhaps they have a couple of questions they want to ask you, and before you can go. So I want to ask at least 3 people first, just in one minute to ask questions Yeah, so I want to request, okay, let me see. Three people. I can see hands raised, but I don't. Yes, Marvin. Yes, hello. Three people. We want at least three people to ask questions. The first three people, please.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, hello. We can hear you.
Yeah, this is Sophie. I've been really following and listening to the conversation, tight marking each and everything that you guys have been talking about. My question goes to Solomon Seranja. Yeah, so looking at the critical role that investigative journalism actually does, like exposing, some of these things, because I'm very sure that there are a lot of undercover issues that we really feel should be brought out as Ugandans. So like, what is your take on this in terms of like the COVID experience and then the corruption that has been, recorded and the lacking accountability? Yes.
Thank you so much, Sophie. I know that Solomon is on and is recording that message. The next person, at least three people before we respond.
Yes.
Very quick. Yes.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
People. I'm called Levi. So my question goes to the Honorable MP. Like, members of Parliament have the capability of allocating most of the funds in this country. So why do they always approve loans, yet they know the more loans they approve, the more loans are stolen? Because now, for example, take our loaning capability has exceeded 50%. And even the more money they even borrow, they all embezzle it. So why do they always approve these loans, yet they know they're not going to do anything? Because we are hurting as Ugandans to find that people don't have vaccines, then MPs fight every day. It's so hurting you people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Levi. The third person before I invite the guests to respond.
Hello, good evening. Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Derek
talk about something and this also goes this to our leaders.
said that is going to transfer the 200 million.
Some point you
Transfer the
feel
200 million.
yeah, we are
like if we cannot make accountability of that money, I'm asking how far does he go in taking part as following up the money that he has transferred to his constituents? Does he follow it up? And if he follows it up, does he see the efficiency that it is working on?
Thank you so much. We can first hold on there. I want to invite Solomon Seranja. Let's begin with you in 1 minute to respond to the question from Sophie asking what is the role of investigative journalism?
All right, thank you. Can you guys see me and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Perfect. There's a question that came on investigative journalism and the role in promoting accountability. So I come from a place that investigative journalism should be used as a tool of advocacy. And that's what we're doing at the African Institute for Investigative Journalism. We're currently looking for support to work on a number of stories on accountability, especially on the COVID-19. And through this, we will be working with seasoned investigative reporters on several projects, pretty much anchored on the Auditor General's report, but also on the Ministry of Finance report. We think that if we do very detailed investigative reporting, we will have the nation participate in this conversation, and not to entirely leave the August Assembly for doing oversight. I think they too need support. that if the public does not support or does not come together, and I think that investigative journalism is very critical at this point, that once we do these stories and put them there, they should be able to ignite an anger for, you know, for an anger against corruption, an anger against mismanagement of public resources. Once there is a critical mass of that anger, then the August Assembly cannot just stay quiet. And I think that the citizenry has a role to play in advancing and advocating for accountability. Your MPs need to be put on the spot. Imagine if they come to your constituency and you say, hey, Mr. MP, this is how the district spent this money, you know, and this goes beyond just us at the national level, but also journalists at district level, you know, the journalists at district level have a role to play to chase this money and ask the hard question to the local officials, because ultimately that informs the discussions at national level. So if we have investigative journalists, even at local level, following the money and putting their MPs and local leaders to account, then together we can build a critical mass, a critical mass to actually put people to account. And these MPs should be brought to account at any moment, because if you don't push them, then they'll just eat samosas and take tea. But I think that the pressure needs to come from the constituency, that and I'm really proud of the Public Accounts Committee. So, Honorable Okin, we will be looking at you, and we as the fourth estate, we as the media, we will continue putting you on the spot too, as you're doing your oversight role. Investigative journalists will be putting and focusing their eyes on you as you play your oversight. If you do not do that, then we will play our watchdog role as the fourth estate to also put you to account as you put the executive to account. And we will do this by putting stories out, investigative stories out, and also, you know, and also as well putting the executive to account. So investigative journalism has a role to play in public resource accountability. And this is what we're doing at the African Institute for Investigative Journalism. We want to use investigative journalism as a tool for advocacy. Martha. Oh, they also mentioned about the issue of debt to GDP. Dear Ugandans, allow me give you just 30 seconds of what is going to happen to this country if we do not actually demand for accountability and put an end to borrowing. Currently, Kenya is heavily indebted to the IMF, and recently Kenyans were telling the IMF to stop giving Kenya money. There was an online campaign, we all remember that. China wants to take over the port of Mombasa. This is serious because they are heavily indebted. China is managing, they want to actually manage the Entebbe International Airport. So if you didn't know, the negotiations currently happening is that they should not handle the imports, but they should only handle, you know, a significant part. So there are conversations that government is having with the government of China in how they will be partly handling the management at the Entebbe International Airport as a way of managing our debt. Guys, we are mortgaging our country. Yeah. The Chinese know that they have a long-term strategy. So they are giving us all this money and we're excited about it. We are misusing it. But these Chinese, the Chinese government, and they always have the China-Africa Convention every year, where they say we are giving you more money and we are all clapping, we're giving you more money. Chinese don't give free money, dear Ugandans. They're going to come back and they want to take over and manage, and manage critical essential parts of our country. So we should demand for accountability. We should put our leaders to account to stop just heavily borrowing. Thank you very much, Martha, for that opportunity for me to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Solomon. So now I want to invite Honorable PP Okin to respond to the question by Levy when he was referring to the role in place in relation to the allocation of resources. He also mentioned, highlighted, you know, a question related to how, for instance, when you disburse money, for instance, to your constituency, how do you follow it up, for instance?
Yeah, thank you, Martha, and thank you those who ask questions, especially the one directed to me. But maybe before I go to the two questions that were fully directed to me, I want to thank Honorable Solomon for bringing the issue of mortgaging this country. I think there was a debate, which I think in the last parliament, where I think China was trying to negotiate with the Uganda government to take over the control of Lake Victoria with all its resources, the fish, the sand, etc., etc. Maybe that was dropped, and now the issue of the airport is coming to light. So I think this one requires Ugandans, we need to wake up. We really need to wake up, and you can put pressure wherever you can put so that we are able to do the needful for this country. So that is just to thank my brother, Honorable Solomon. Now, in terms of the transfer of this money, the 200 million I mentioned about, I think you remember this money was given for me to purchase a vehicle, but I think I still have a good condition vehicle, which I bought in the previous parliament. I don't see me buying another vehicle to add on to what I have. So basically, I will just be able to help the people whom I think I'm representing and are suffering on the ground there to make sure I boost the production and productivity level of my constituency. And I can tell you, Solomon, you can follow up this eventually with me and see how this thing is going to work, so that what I've said on TV on this forum actually come to light, not just politicking. I meant it, and I will be able to do it.
Sorry. Can I just interrupt there? Sorry,
yes.
Moderator and Honorable.
Yes, Ecuador. Yes.
What you're doing is very good.
Yeah.
What other MPs are doing is very good at individual level.
Yes.
But we are having 529 divided efforts on things which are not going to save us from the pandemic. The problem is the pandemic now. Any other time, you're free to do what you want to do. We are saying, could Parliament have, through their commission, passed a resolution and say this money should go to tangible inputs for COVID-19? Otherwise, of course, what you are saying is very rational. So this is the fundamental question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you are very right, Dr. Ekwaro. And as you have been following how Parliament has been able to disburse some of this money, including the other 20 million that was given in the 10th Parliament. Well, I really don't see the priority of the government very well, because normally what happened, Parliament appropriate money according to the priorities the government has presented in Parliament. So in this context, I think, well, it could be subject of discussion, which we can initiate. But the challenge is that this money has already gone into our individual accounts, and other members have even utilized it. Would be really a total, I don't know what it is to bring this money again back. But I think we should appeal now to individual members of Parliament. This is the most appropriate way we can really handle the situation now. We appeal to individual members of Parliament, just like others are also doing, buying ambulances, building hospitals, doing stuff like buying tractors. Let us appeal to individual members of Parliament that they have a stake in the life of the citizen in which they represent in the Parliament of Uganda. So if you feel for your people, if you really feel for your people who voted for you, and the reason why you stood to represent them, I think you should be able to do something for them, Honorable Dr. Ekwaro. But as of now, this money has already gone into individual accounts. It may not necessarily now be possible to retrieve it back to reappropriate it to address the issue of this COVID-19. But in my view, we need to appeal to individual members of Parliament now to make sure they utilize that money appropriately. On my side, I will follow this money. I will be there physically. I'll be able to make sure the plans and whatever that has been drawn in terms of buying oxygen and ox plows given to the vulnerable children, like the people with nodding, families with nodding syndromes, and then the elderly, the disabilities, the orphans, whatever the amount of money we'll be able to get will be able to be given to my people effectively. Lastly, on the issue of approval of loans.
Who told that
on the approval of loans, I want to say that of course is the responsibility of Parliament to appropriate and also to approve loans. When you look at the way we have been approving these loans, we have been approving these loans based mainly on the political line than economic line, because consideration of loans, we ought to, as Parliament, consider the economic benefit of any loan or of any kind of financial appropriation that goes to be able to address the issue of service delivery. But when I look at this, the issue has been more political, is concerning global politics, and then secondly, the politics of numbers in the House. A few of us, when you look at the answer, have been saying no to some of these loans. I've been saying no to some of these loans until even the non-performing loans, which we have had and we have been paying interest in, have actually been able to be put to use. But because of the politics of number, because of the politics of the global politics that we have, some of these loans normally are actually approved. And that's a big challenge, contrary to whatever arguments some of us have been advancing in the House. So is the politics of number, the number that normally try their best to say, this is a government loan, the government has to function, the government has to move, we need to approve this in order to push A and B. So this is the challenge that we get as a minority representation in Parliament as the opposition. So I think probably we need to look into this and also be able to involve our individual members of Parliament belonging to the ruling government or the opposition to be able to be vigilant in as far as some of this approval of loan is concerned. Because some loans are really not necessary, to be honest. They're absolutely not necessary. When you look at the conditions and when you look at the way the loan is supposed to be utilized, it's completely unnecessary. But at the end of the day, you find the numbers when we vote, the numbers of the people who will say, let us approve the loan will be more than those who will say the loan should not be approved. So this is a matter of politics, and but both at the local level here and as well as at the international level. So I end here and thank you very, very much for Martina for involving me in this discussion. I'm looking forward to, again, another engagement in future. Asante sana. May God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. I want to give one more person. I think one more person. If there is a burning issue that you want to raise that has not been addressed by the panel before we come to a close. One more person. I want to give one person an opportunity.
Yeah, good evening, madam.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Make it quick.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ndiamwa Cherisa. I had raised my hand and you are not. But my point is everything in this country is dying. So I was requesting for this, as you have engaged in the honorable president, can we get a chance and we maybe interface with our president, maybe on a Zoom meeting? That's not harmful, so that we can interact with him directly and raise him the questions, because everything you see, you remember when the president said MPs should return that. When the president said that MPs should return the other 20 million, around 20 million, MPs got into fear and some of them returned that because they were not accounting for themselves. So when you see all this squandering and taking place in our country, I think it's just lacking about the president's initiative. So if interacting, then at least he would be able to get our views from here down. And another thing we need to understand is our country has grown in terms of security.
Make it quick, please. Make it quick, please.
Yes. We had a person in charge who is. Can we change leadership so that at one time we have a president? Can we change leadership and at one time we have a president who is an economist? we need to change leadership and only one on the president's side. Some requesting we have an interaction and others anytime, but also reach request him to interact with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. The Honorable Okija is also here. He's a member of parliament and interacts with the executive. I believe he's going to pass your message to, the president. So I want to, first of all, before we close, yes, I want to, there's someone who has expressed interest in giving a vote of thanks to the panelists for this wonderful presentation. And, but before I can get that person, I want to invite Solomon Serwanja, being an investigative journalist, as we conclude, as we wrap up, what, according to you, have been the key take-home points from this particular discussion? In about 2 minutes, so that we can invite the person, and then we end this meeting.
Well, I'm really happy that we've had this conversation. And as the African Institute for Investigative Journalism, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what is at our core. I think that this COVID-19 situation has really opened it up for all of us to be part of the question of accountability. Before, we used to have the Public Accounts Committee squeeze people and they are sweating. Now what the social spaces have provided us with is an opportunity to put our leaders to account. We know that there's a growth of citizen journalism, which in my view is the fifth estate. The people now have Twitter, they have Facebook, they have YouTube, they have platforms like these to actually hold national conversations. And this goes to underscore that the issues of accountability belong to all of us. I think all of us as a people need to be involved in this conversation. Right from the grassroots, I've seen people from Kitgum, people from Bahara, Ishaka, on this call. That's there. Before it gets to the national level, let's start it at local government level, at district level, at sub-county level, so that we be part of the entire process of putting people to account. By the time it comes to national level, then perhaps we have built enough critical support to buttress the Public Accounts Committee when they're asking for these questions. So mine is to really appreciate everyone who has been part of this call, but also to let everyone know that the issues of accountability are not only for the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. It's not only for the IGG, it's all of us as Ugandans, and we all have a critical role. It's not only for the civil society organizations like the SEHAD, it's all of us. It's not like only for the Doctors Association and the entire fraternity. It's all of us. We all have a joint responsibility to play to put our leaders to account. And your voice matters. Do not be quiet. Do not stay silent. Rise up, use every available opportunity that you have on your social media, on YouTube, before people. All of you have a role to play. Don't leave it to the August Assembly alone. And as investigative journalists, we will play our role, and I can assure you. Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you so much, Solomon Serwanja, and all participants. At this time, I want to invite the gentleman who has been requesting us to give him an opportunity to give a vote of thanks. Ian, I think I can't remember. Nachimolo Ian, you're welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Angela. I hope you can get me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks so much for this wonderful arrangement and ensuring that you bring unto us nice panelists, great men, and of course, men of knowledge and integrity. On behalf of Afli, I've been a member for quite long, and at least these engagements have not left me the same. I would like to say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much, Afli, and may God bless you abundantly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hian, for your that vote of thanks. And I want to, before I close, I know that Honorable David Pulkol is also part of this particular meeting. I want to know if you would like to, greet the guests or, give a vote of thanks from the side of Afli before we close.
Okay,
yes.
I had already,
Yeah.
yes, I had already thought that the citizens are engaging with the civil society, with leaders in parliament. And definitely what we're doing is that from this discussion, we're going to summarize what came out here, and also the comments on the page, on the chat. We'll separate them into recommendations, and then what were the comments from citizens. And then our understanding with the chairperson, the vice chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, who delegated to Honorable Basalirwa, who delegated to Honorable Kin, is that this discussion will not remain here, but we are going to summarize it for them, and including the audio, the video, we're going to give it to Public Accounts Committee, so that when they summon the people who have been involved or mentioned by the Auditor General, so that the citizens' comments, the citizens' sentiments, so that the citizens' recommendations and the observations will be put before them. So I'm happy that Honorable Kin has felt for himself, and he wishes that many of his colleagues were here to hear for themselves. So don't worry about that. That's Africa Leadership Institute. We are a parliamentary monitoring organization. As you know, we produce the Parliamentary Performance Scorecard, and we're so happy to host you here. And for Serwanja, we say thank you to you, and we're partnering with you, with your African Institute for Investigative Journalism. So we are working with the three institutions, accountability institutions of government. We're working with Office of the Auditor General. We are working with IGG's office. We are working with the PPDA. So what are we doing with them? We've just finished a survey and reviewing all their training materials for their staff, and therefore building the capacity. And we're developing training materials for CSOs that more civil society organizations can work with these three institutions. And also just like we're working with Parliament. So we want to step up the issue of public accountability. And so what does it mean for us? One, if you go to the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, power is arranged in such a way that Article 1 belongs to citizens of Uganda. That power is delegated to the executive, delegated. So when you appoint a president, as he coming to speak tonight, it is like you and me who are speaking. You have delegated that power to him when he appoints ministers, when he appoints permanent secretaries, when he appoints ambassadors. So it's like you and me who have appointed. Then some power has been delegated to the MPs as a legislature. Parliament is the only institution that can make something that has the effect of law. So that's why we're asking Parliament, wait a minute, some of the measures that government, that Honorable Cheng is putting forward, the Minister of Health or the President, are bordering on the Constitution rights. So why don't you make these into law on how to manage pandemics and endemics, so that you can some of the rights and be able to. Of course, when you read the Public Health Management Act, there's nothing about LDUs beating people. So these are issues which when they go overboard, how are they being restrained? So finally, Article 38 says, citizens of Uganda have a right to peacefully influence the decisions and policies of their government, either clause 1, either through their representatives, the MPs who have elected like Honorable Kin here, either through them or through civic associations like CSOs. So people say, where do we derive the rights, the power to do what we are doing? It is Article 38 of our Constitution. So honorable members and participants of this forum, you've done a tremendous job and raised your issues. Do not say that you have not been picked to ask questions. We're going to summarize all this and they will end up in Parliament. So thank you very much. And please do come again And for Honorable Echeru, we treasure our partnership with the organization. And of course, our one and the very one, the executive member of the Uganda Medical Association of the frontline workers. We owe a lot to you. We lift our hearts, we salute you for the frontline and the dedicated work your members of staff have really demonstrated, even through difficult hardships. So please, our hearts are with you. Our hearts are with your colleagues. And of course, for our Member of Parliament, we say thank you very much. All eyes are now focused on you. So where will the 11th Parliament make a difference? The good thing about the 11th Parliament, most of you are young. When we analyzed the data recently, we found the 10th Parliament had more people from 50 years and above, and there were fewer who are younger. And so in 20 years' time, when these loans become mature, they may be 70 or maybe 80 or even 90 years old. So they don't seem to care. But for those of you who are young, these things will catch up with you. So tread very carefully and have Uganda at heart and for God our country. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Honorable David Pukol. And I want to thank all of you participants who have been part of us through to this time. Thank you so much, Solomon Seranja. Thank you so much, Honorable PP Okino Jara. Thank you so much, Peter Echeru, our guests, and Dr. Ekwaro, and all of you who have been participating through to this time. We have come to the end of this debate, and until next time, we will host another debate again next week on Friday. We'll be sharing how the topic and then circulating the flyer for you to know when and time again. So I want to say bye-bye to all of you, and I prayed at the beginning. I actually prayed before I came for this meeting, although even if we forgot to pray in the beginning, but I prayed, and we thank God that it has been a success, that is protecting all of us. And yes, again, my name is Martha Angela Martina. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. 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 All right.